I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Good morning, folks. This is Chris live in Central Pennsylvania. I forgot to turn my light on just a second there. Chris live in Central. Give me a second here. The live light isn't on. On-air light's not on. It is, after all, 3 a.m., nearly 4 a.m., and I haven't slept since Sunday, so hopefully I'm not a little groggy. Sound is 5x5. Thank you for the heads up there, Dylan. Appreciate that. Always kind. Helps keep the broadcast on track there. That was Giselle with Site Africa at the beginning there. Thanks for tuning in. It is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. The Democratic Alliance has a press conference here in about 22 minutes from now. It's the post-Federal Council press conference. DA leadership will address the media. They'll discuss recent political developments in preparation for the upcoming local government elections. This is after an important meeting of the Federal Council. Now, we can imagine they probably talked about what's going on with expropriation without compensation, the National Health Insurance Initiative, the Bella Bill, as well as the 3% black tax. DA Federal Leader John Steenhuisen, Member of Parliament, Federal Chairperson Dr. Ivan Meyer, a provincial minister, and then the Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zilla will address the media. So, waiting to see what happens here. Well, we'll see if they show up on time, Dylan. Hopefully they will. John Steenhuisen was late the other day. It was very disrespectful and rude. But, hey, the DA has learned some good habits, bad habits, from the ANC now that they're in governance. So will the DA leave the Government National Union? Don't hold your breath. You'll just turn blue. But I couldn't risk that actually does happen, because if that happens, imagine what so many people will be curious and want to jump in and tune in and see what's being said. So, therefore, I stayed up tonight to bring this broadcast to you. So for those who are not regulars on the channel, which I think everyone that's here currently is, this is a live reaction and commentary, which means that I will comment during the broadcast. If you don't want to hear my commentary, that's your prerogative. You can go watch this on the DA's website or watch videos of it afterwards. But the purpose of a live reaction and commentary is for the commentator, the analyst, to react as the events unfold and then give analysis afterwards. But that seems to be lost on some people. So anyway, but not my regular audience. Thanks for being here, folks. Yesterday's video really took off and was amazing. Had like 10,000 views in the first 2 hours, 13,000 in the first 2 hours, but it's only up at about 36,000 now, so it really lost a lot of steam, but it's still getting views. Let me take a look at where it's at right now. That's the one I did yesterday about Gate McKenzie. And some people thought I was attacking Gate McKenzie. I don't know where they get that from. They're not paying attention. I'm holding to a standard that he's established, and so he should be held to that standard, but certainly not attacking him. At 37,700. So getting about 900 views per hour right now, so that's good. Hopefully it'll get us up over 40,000. It'd be nice if that was another 50,000 view video. I'd really be excited about that. So let's see what we've got in the chat here. Wonderful Fire Dragon says, yeah, the DA is definitely going to roll over. And you want Trump's email address. Trust me, my friend, if I had Trump's email address, I don't think you get a response, because Trump is not even answering his phone now. People are close to him saying it's frustrating. The president is so busy. The guy's 78 years old. He's everywhere. He was in Miami earlier today at a conference, Republican leadership conference. He came back. He landed, and he's just boom, boom, boom. He was at a casino Saturday in Las Vegas. He's been all over the country. He was in North Carolina for the flood relief. He was in California for the fires. None of these places Biden went to. And Trump, well, he went to L.A., I guess. But Trump was all over the place. And so he's not checking his mail. He's not checking his phone. And if I had his email, I'd use that to get myself a job in the Trump administration, because I want to be part of this revolution in American history here. They did ask for my curriculum vitae, but I've not heard back, and I don't expect I will. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. Dylan Comberg is here. Welcome to you, Dylan. Teresa, hello. Good morning to you. R1 is back. R1, I always wonder if that's like supposed to be for the rifle, R1. James Bowie. Jillian Smith's back. Jillian, how you doing there? Diane Humple's here. And R1 says, "House, I'm so happy to see how Trump has started." Oh, yeah, this is amazing. There's nothing like this in the history. My entire life, I've never seen anything like this. This is presidential. The only thing that comes close to this would be Ronald Reagan's first term. but the country was collapsing. I mean, literally collapsing. Here, we have a lot of problems, but we're not on the verge of collapse. But we were the hostage crisis in Iran, the oil prices off the charts, the Arab oil embargo, the second one, America bloodied and bruised and not respected in the world, the economy collapsing, gas lines. It was horrible. It was horrible. Inflation, the prime lending rate was like 15%. Whew, it's insane. That's something I've never seen again in my life. Thank goodness. Yep. At least you have a president, unlike South Africa. Yeah, USA. Yeah, R1. Pretty exciting stuff there. But yeah, and then I did another video earlier this evening. This was in response to South Africans responding to the misleading story that USAID has ended foreign aid. That's not true. It's been paused for 90 days while the president has his team in the State Department, Marco Rubio, look it over and determine if we've got issues with our aid or if it's in line with our foreign policy. So it hasn't ended. It hasn't been frozen. And that's a lie. Dan Quarter, Mr. Beanie condom wearing Dan Quarter, said that, we stopped our aid and it was catastrophic for South Africa. And he didn't criticize the African National Congress for the trillions of rand they've stolen, blaming Americans instead because we don't want to pay for your antiretrovirals. I mean, we spent tens of billions of dollars developing them. We took the risk. You took no risk. You developed nothing. And then we give you the drugs and then we pay to hand them out to people and ungrateful ingrates want to actually lip off to us. This is the same Dan Quarter who consistently insulted Trump and insulted America. And of course, Cyril Ramaphosa's done the same thing. You must leave South Africa alone. This is our business. Stay out. Okay, fine. Then we just take our money and walk away. You don't need our money. You don't need it. So go to China, go to Tehran, go to Moscow. Get your money there. Yeah, Dan told you it's frozen, but Dan is a flat-out liar. He's just dumb, one of the two. Stupid people should wear signs. That way you wouldn't ask them questions. Renette Bernardo's back. Hey, how you doing there? So hot in Saldana. Not here, my friend. It is not hot here at all. It is, oh my goodness, what is the temperature here? Wait a second, where did my video go? Hang on a second, something's missing here. There it is. Okay, let me make sure I got the right one up here. There we go. Okay, cool. I got a little nervous there for a second. Yep, they're not ready yet. 17 people waiting. You see how interested people are in the DA? Yep. Trevor Bush is back. Who else? Apparently the USA-funded clinics already closed the doors. Well, that's their own stupidity, Jillian. The statement's pretty clear. I read it, and I can tell you exactly what it says. Let me find that bad boy. Hang on a second. That's not what I want. I'm going to find the file. Documents, modified. Nope, it's going to be under this folder. Okay, here we go. Come on. Petro, DA press conference. Mackenzie, where the heck's that? Niehaus, USAID, there it is, okay. So, this is what it says. Assessment of programmatic efficiencies and consistency with U.S. foreign policy. All department and agency heads with responsibility for U.S. foreign development, that includes Department of Defense and Commerce and others, assistance programs shall immediately pause new obligations, and disbursements of development assistance funds to foreign countries and implementing non-governmental organizations. So that's new funds, not existing funds, not existing programs. So that's simply a lie. These people aren't bright enough to read modern standard written English. That's their stupidity. Sorry for the people who are going to suffer. Yeah, people are going to suffer. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. George Bush created something called the President's Emergency Program for AIDS Relief. It's an emergency. What emergency lasts for 22 years? That's not an emergency. That's a chronic situation. It was on governments in Africa and Thailand and others who are big beneficiaries of this money in India to develop their own programs and pay their own way eventually. We've renewed PEPFAR 4 times. How long do we have to pay for other people's mistakes, other people's problems? Generosity has its limits. I think we more than fulfilled our commitment after 10 years, let alone 22 years, 23 years. Yeah. Do you think sanctions will stop, change? Well, they're not sanctions, James. First off, let's be clear about that. There are no sanctions here. This isn't. See, that's another thing I put in my video. They need to get over themselves. The leftists in South Africa. This isn't about South Africa, and it isn't targeting South Africa. If you want to be targeted, we can target South Africa. I mean, it certainly deserves it. South Africa has acted against U.S. national interest. Ramaphosa is an arrogant asshat who's been disrespectful and rude to the President of the United States on multiple occasions, and we've done nothing to South African response. South Africa imposed a 75% tariff on our poultry exports to South Africa. South Africa maintains a duty-free entry into our marketplace despite undermining our foreign policy vis-a-vis the Russia-Ukraine conflict, vis-a-vis Israel-Gaza. And then its threats to the United States, attacking us over BRICS currency. South Africa has not been a good friend. A Russian-sanctioned defense contractor arrives in Simonstown in the dark of night and offloads cargo, and then the ANC does a fake investigation 8 months later after the public pressure finally built, and then they just, they whitewashed and say there was nothing to see here. But eyewitnesses saw the Special Forces BMWs at the plated vehicles. They identified the plates, which belonged to the Department of Defense, Special Forces out of Bloemfontein. And we know that there was something going on that wasn't supposed to happen. But they act like, there's nothing to see here. So they've insulted us, and they've been belittled us, and they've called us names. And quite frankly, the South African government deserves to be sanctioned, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. It shows just how much Ramaphosa feel for his people. Most of our Africans, yeah, exactly. 8.5 million South Africans, the vast majority of whom are black, need antiretrovirals. They're HIV positive. No, not all need antiretrovirals. I forget the exact number. I think it's close to 5 million are taking antiretrovirals. And he says, agree, Chris, Africa is in a state of the U.S. At some point, you need to stand up and run your own country properly. Or not. Yeah, exactly. Don't blame the U.S. I'm tired of people lying. I read this garbage I read. I posted my video earlier from this idiot that's on, who had his op-ed published in the toilet paper of record. You know that is, the Independent Online. I've told you about those guys. So this guy, what did he say? Let me find this down here. I just wanted the little quotes out of there. It's near the bottom. This drive for unfettered power is being pursued with renewed fervor and directness, targeting not only geopolitical rivals, but also long-standing Western white race allies. What the hell's a white race, you racist? Including those in Europe and its neighboring Canada. Critics who dismissed Trump's first term as chaotic and unplanned failed to recognize the method behind the madness. Yeah, putting up with that garbage. This is some idiot academic who gets space in the toilet paper record. Meanwhile, what's going on here? Oops. Did I lose my internet? Am I still live? I got something going on here. Hang on. Okay, I'm here. Oh, sorry, it was something wasn't connecting over here. Just double checking on. 76 people currently here. Thanks for being here, folks. 4 more killed in the DRC. I didn't see that update, African Idiot. It must have just come out because I've been following the news all night. Remember, it's 4 o'clock in the morning here.
Pay to services and having zero tolerance for corruption.
Okay. Oh, the DA starting there. Okay. 3 minutes and 29 seconds, the DA is going to go live. They have zero tolerance for corruption. I wonder how J.P. Smith feels right now. Not accusing him of corruption, but he's being accused of it. So I wonder how he feels being accused. Shows just how much. Okay. Sometimes wonder where to find these kinds of liberal white South Africans. It boggles my mind. Yeah, I don't know where they find them either. Devet Oosthuizen says, hopefully once the funding is cut, our residents realize we need the West. Yeah. Thank you, Dylan. Yeah, I'm still alive. There's just something, the chat got disconnected on the DA's feed. It's a lovely colored lady on here who's, here, let me put her up on, oh, she's trying to recruit you for the DA. I'm not interested. Here she is. There she is. Yeah, find out who your ward counselor is. I don't have a ward counselor. I'm not a South African. Anyway, so let me get this back online. There we go. So there's the biggest portion of DA voters right there, colored South Africans. She's very articulate. I know you guys can't hear her. Here you go.
Democratic Alliance to rescue South Africa.
I had to put it off because I don't want to get a copyright claim. Anyway, so I've got that up. I'm going to turn that off just for the moment. And as soon as it goes live, we will go back to that. All right, folks? So the DA up in supposedly in 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And they're supposed to go on a quarter after. So if they go live in 2 minutes and 7 seconds, that's, yeah, she's definitely cute, says R1. Yep. Very attractive colored lady. Anyway, so, well, that's smart of the DA. You're going to put good-looking people forward. I mean, that's why the Wyatt Independent News Network puts me on camera. I mean, you know, if you're dead sexy, you got to be on camera, right? Yeah, anyway. Anyway. So, yeah, I saw the videos that were coming out of the Congo, and the fire discipline was ridiculous. The behavior of the soldiers was atrocious. And only one of the videos did I actually see something that actually was reasonable, and it was an Afrikaans-speaking South African, presumably white, sounded white, who was giving directions to the soldiers who were clueless about how to lay down suppressive fire. But they just like firing their 14.7 millimeter, guns into the bush, just recklessly. It's crazy. Anyway, yikes. So, and then I did a video, after I did that video, I did another video on Karl Niehaus, or as we affectionately call him, Karl Nyhorst, who is demanding the resignation of Engin Motshekga over the DRC. Well, a lot of people like to see Engin Motshekga resign. I mean, we wanted to resign from education for 16 years, but Karl Niehaus is complaining that, she knew all about this and she misled us in the press, went on television and said that they were fine, they could defend the country, and, everything was great in the DRC. And then only for him to admit, he's such an idiot, only to admit that he knew all along too. So where were you calling for a withdrawal of the troops, funding for them, resources, going to the press, standing on the mountaintop, screaming? You were nowhere. You were part and parcel of the failure as a member of the defense portfolio. So sit down, shut up, be quiet, Karl Niehaus. Anyway, so I did that one. So, yeah, you're so vain. You probably think this song is about you, don't you? Carly Simon. Western Cape is full of white liberals. My sister-in-law's daughter was brainwashed at Stellenbosch, and now she is so apologetic for being white. Yeah, why would anybody apologize for who they are? That's just stupid. That is just stupid. That's racist. I mean, you're racist against people if you apologize for being whatever skin color you are. Steve Biko, his movement was about being who you are, and having no apologies for who you are. The Black Consciousness movement. Well, we need a white consciousness movement, but that would be racism and white supremacy. Except it's not. If you're gonna have a Black consciousness movement, why can't you have a white consciousness movement, right? But of course, it'll be listed as a racist thing. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But Marius, I feel bad, but I have no sympathy for her. She's a waste of tissue, if that's how she is. And if people fall for that, I went to university, and we had liberal nonsense at universities, but I didn't fall for it. I've been a conservative my entire life, and I'm not apologizing for it. I've defended liberty and freedom my entire life. Those are traditional liberal values that liberals have abandoned. They have abandoned them in their entirety. So we're waiting. The DA's got their self ready now. Here you go. So we're waiting for it to get started here. And we'll see what they have to say. Will they leave the... Okay, so let me do it. I'm going to do a poll. Okay, so let's do that. Let me get myself back on camera here first before there we go. All right, so let's do a poll. Okay, I only get 2 answers on this. I hate this. YouTube's new polls suck. Used to be able to put, start a poll. You able to put, now they put it back. Son of a gun. It's back. Add an option. Will the DA leave the GNU today? All right. Well, boy, I got to work on my typing skills. They just keep getting. I have to get back and retype stuff all the time. Yes. No. Gave you 3 options. Here's the poll, folks. Feel free to lodge your vote now that we've got the choices back. Thank you, YouTube, for restoring the poll, which was screwed up for about a week. All right, so 84 people currently here. Be sure to hit the like button, folks, if you don't mind. It doesn't cost anything but a moment of your time. Here, let me show you how it's done. It goes right below the video.
That was easy.
See, you get a free easy button there. Just hit that like button and join us. By the way, I have these studio lights, which here on the side, I'll show you so you can see the difference when they're off. Yeah, see the difference? 4 o'clock in the morning, the sun hasn't come up yet. So I can switch them onto this color light, which is warm light. I don't like that. Then you got white light. That's okay, but it hurts my eyes. And then we got the cold light, and that's the one I use for my studio. So I bought these studio lights when I started getting serious about broadcasting back in 2020. And 2 years after I got them, one of the lamps blew out. And the lamps are like $18 a piece. I ordered a set of 2 replacements from Amazon, and I replaced one of the bulbs. And then I kind of forgot about it. Well, tonight, one of them went out. I mean, it still works, but only on one of the levels. It doesn't do this color. So it's very distracting to have 2 different ones. So then I went to look to order them from Amazon, and I saw that I'd ordered 2. So I'm like, ooh, I went in the basement, and like, guess what? I had another bulb. So saved the night. Because it's very distracting trying to record when you don't have these lights. Anyway, no, Charles, I've got no sleep. No sleep. I mean, I might have dozed for 15 minutes while the TV was on earlier, but I've gotten no sleep. I'm working on no sleep. I feel like Jerry Seinfeld, the episode where he had Kenny Rogers Roasters. I'm working on no sleep, no sleep. All right, are they ready yet? The DA is still not ready yet. They're supposed to be live in 4 minutes, so we won't blame them if they're not live yet. Expropriated Hazen is keeping us in suspenders. Just watch more footage, soldiers. I don't know why I do it, because it makes me angry. Well, it makes me angry too, Charles. You know, if you're a soldier, it really pisses you off, because these aren't soldiers. These are little more than thugs in uniform. And I'm not criticizing them as if they have evil intent like criminals in, you know, militias and such, and abusive militaries in Africa, but they're not trained properly. I mean, they pull the bolt back and they start firing. And in fact, I saw one idiot standing there in his shorts with a Kevlar helmet on, you know, surveying where they're shooting down range and wide open. I mean, there's no concealment or cover there whatsoever. He's lucky he's alive. Anyway, yeah, it's not good. And the government of South Africa doesn't give two flips. These are tin soldiers from the African National Congress, from the Thule House, who send soldiers to their deaths. And most of them are black that die. So, when Carl Niehaus claims he knew nothing about it, I offered to purchase him a copy of this book. You know, you don't have to be an expert. The Battle of Bangui. You can get this exclusive. It's 360 Rand. You can pick it up there. So, and you can learn all about how bad things are. Of course, I knew that. I've been telling people about that for 25 years. It just gets worse and worse. Stupidity and lack of leadership is right. It is, but the lack of leadership is pervasive. It's all over. I received an email from someone who wrote an article about the elections last year, and he gave me some very interesting insight on this. Let me see if I can find this in another window here. Okay, let me try it over here. So, I got to go into my mail, see if I can find this message. It said to me earlier I was out busy. Oh, here they go. They're ready. I got an article appearing in the Daily Friend tomorrow, by the way, folks. Okay, here we go.
Morning, South Africa. Thank you so very much to colleagues for being here today and availing yourselves. For those of you who are tuning in online, thank you for tuning in. My name is Karabo Khachal, DA National Spokesperson. The purpose of today's briefing is to achieve two things. One, we're going to be giving some remarks on a few political developments that we've seen across the recent days. We're also going to be giving an overview post our Federal Council meeting yesterday about our candidate process going into 2026. And doing so today is our federal leader, John Steenhuisen, our federal chairperson, that is Dr. Ivan Meyer, as well as the chairperson of Federal Council, Helen Ziller, and Willie Okamp, my co-pilot, as I call him. He's going to be doing our question and answer session. Right, John, the floor is yours.
She called her mayor. You need to call her premier. That's a higher office.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish to express the condolences of our party on all of those South African soldiers, those brave men and women who have lost their life in Goma during the course of this week. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families, and we remain in deep awe of their service to our country. Please forgive me as well. I've also picked up the Gauteng virus.
Sounds like it.
And if you're asking me why it's a Gauteng virus, it's a virus and it comes from Gauteng. And it's obviously affected my voice. As stated this past weekend and many times prior, the Democratic Alliance entered into the government of national unity with two key considerations in mind. Firstly, the ANC had insufficient votes to govern outright on their own, and therefore a coalition government was required. South Africa would not survive a doomsday coalition, which included either the EFF or the MK party, or both. A coalition which included a party with a proven track record in good governance, fiscal discipline, and respect for the rule of law was required, and that party is the Democratic Alliance.
That's debatable.
Secondly, this provided an opportunity to have direct influence on the programs of government and the implementation of a new agenda focused on inclusive growth, economic prosperity and jobs, and one that was agreed to by a diverse set of ideological policies and principles. For this to be possible, the two largest parties within the GNU needed to ensure that at all times there was consensus on government's program of action. Of late, this consensus has clearly been brought into question. The DA is obviously extremely committed to ensuring that this coalition government succeeds in its two primary objectives: increased and inclusive economic growth and jobs. It was for this reason that I wrote to the President declaring a dispute and invoking Clause 19 of the Statement of Intent. Clause 19 codifies the procedure to be followed when differences on issues arise between parties to the GNU. Let me also be very clear, because I've noted certain tweets by certain office bearers in the ANC that seem to imply that 19 doesn't apply to decisions on legislation and other things. It absolutely does. It applies to any matter where there's no agreement between the parties within the GNU. Clause 19.3 states specifically that, and I quote, sufficient consensus exists when parties to the GNU representing 60% of seats in the National Assembly agree, unquote. The only parties that represent 60% of the vote in the National Assembly.
Speed. The DA has monetized their channel. Sorry, folks.
I insisted on a meeting with the President, and that this meeting must take place prior to the upcoming Cabinet Lekgotla, which is taking place over the next 2 days. This is where important government decisions are going to be made and where the program of action for the Government of National Unity will be set out. I'm glad that the President has heeded the call and discussions underway to arrange this meeting between myself and the President. I hope that this will be the first step in improving the relationships and stability and restoring trust amongst coalition partners within the GNU. We remain committed to the Government of National Unity. We see it as a clear vehicle for economic growth and job creation. A very real risk to the country, however, still remains, and that risk is the implementation of the NHI. We have submitted over the course of the last few months detailed programs, alternatives, as well as costed different ways of being able to implement universal access to basic healthcare for all South Africans, regardless of their income status or geographic area.
Minus our $350 million. You're not getting any more USAID money,
It is
buddy.
important to emphasize that the Democratic Alliance stands square behind universal access to basic healthcare for all South Africans. We do not, however, believe that the currently conceived NHI, as presented, will achieve universal healthcare and without doing significant damage to the private healthcare sector in South Africa, and also potentially causing the collapse or further collapse of the public healthcare sector. As stated when we entered the GNU, we said that the DA would not be part of any government which crashes the economy or trashes the Constitution.
That's what the ANC is doing.
Implementation of the NHI in its current form, we believe, will destroy the private healthcare sector. The constitutional right to have access to healthcare services will also be severely compromised, if not totally destroyed. The subsequent economic decline and job losses will simply be unbearable. Tomorrow, Cabinet will meet to finalise the medium-term development plan, which will inform the budget, and the budget informs government's programme of action. Our submission to the President was clear around what we believe are concrete alternatives where we can find common ground on achieving universal access to basic healthcare for all South Africans, regardless of their income or geography. And we will certainly be moving within the MDTP process to ensure that those submissions are aired and listened to. However, if there's an insistence that without any further consultation, NHI in its current form, including the targets it set out to collapse private medical health care and remove tax credits for medical aid, will not be tolerated. I reiterate my earlier statement. The Democratic Alliance stands square behind the Government of National Unity.
Of course they do.
We see it as an opportunity for South Africa to move forward in a unified way and in a way that grows the economy and creates jobs. Having returned from Davos, having engaged with a number of other countries, both bilaterally and multilaterally, there's a renewed excitement in South Africa.
No, there isn't.
Investors are looking at South Africa
No, we're not.
as a viable investment destination.
You're
again.
high. You're high.
The GNU has already started to show the green shoots of economic growth and lowering unemployment figures. I sincerely hope that as the President and I and others, because we're not the only party who's feeling excluded from the ANC's decision-making and feeling marginalised and have been reduced to being spectators. At least 3 of the other parties in the GNU have released statements over the last 72 hours indicating their unhappiness with the lack of consultation within the Government of National Unity. So we really hope that the President is going to treat this impasse with the urgency that it deserves, and that concrete measures are going to be found to ensure that we are able to make this GNU work. The Democratic Alliance's Federal Council met yesterday, and there were extensive discussions over a variety of matters, including the GNU. The Democratic Alliance remains, as a political party, fully committed to the GNU.
Yeah, you already said that. It's 3 times now.
However, we need to make sure that the Democratic Alliance, as the second largest party in the GNU, is allowed to be able to express itself, is allowed to put on the table alternatives, and to work together to find consensus decision-making within the GNU.
That's not
If
part
that
of
is
the NDR,
not possible, it makes future involvement in the GNU incredibly difficult to justify to our voters, the 3.5 million people who entrusted us with their vote in this last election. Entering into the GNU was a decision not made lightly. It was made after extensive discussion, looking at varieties of scenarios. Exiting the GNU will also not be made a decision that will be made lightly or in a cavalier way, because we can see already some of the symptoms of what happens with even a bit of instability in the GNU, and that's reflected in what happened in the RAND over the course of the last 24 hours.
Yeah, you said it's
We want to see South Africa succeed. We are committed to a country that is more inclusive, that has greater opportunities for job creation for more South Africans, in which every South African can live a life of opportunity and dignity, and finds in South Africa a government that's on their side to help them realize that opportunity and to be the best that they can be for themselves and their families. We will continue to work as hard as we can and as constructively as we can with all parties to the GNU, including the ANC, and we hope to find consensus in the way forward. But I must make it very clear, and no one must be under any doubt, that we will not be taken for granted. We will not be reduced
You've already
to
been
being
taken for granted.
spectators. And the day that we cannot have an influence on growing the economy and creating jobs will be the day that our future involvement in the GNU will have to be questioned. Thank you very much.
You're already taken for granted. Helen looks pretty stoic. Here's Evan Meyer there. You're already not even involved here, buddy. You're delusional there, John Steenhuisen.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. This weekend, in fact, yesterday, the Democratic Alliance Federal Council, which is the highest body outside a federal Congress, met here in Johannesburg. All people from across South Africa, all 9 provinces, the provincial leaders, various structures of the various legislatures, various municipalities, various regions in South Africa, had a full day discussing very important matters yesterday.
Such as?
That meeting was chaired by the chairperson of the Federal Council, Ms. Helen Ziller. Very important Federal Council, the first Federal Council for the year 2025. And the main purpose of this Federal Council was to prepare for the local government election 2026.
So that's why they met, not to deal
Because
with
we
the
have
issues at
seen
hand.
that it is possible for the Democratic Alliance to become the single biggest party in South Africa in the 2026 elections.
Crazy!
Because what we have seen here in South Africa now, all municipalities in South Africa, major municipalities, major metros also right here in Gauteng, they face a governance crisis and they face a service delivery crisis.
They're not turning to you, they
So the
abandoned you,
DA
Schwanning.
Democratic Alliance Federal Council have met to discuss our plan and the way forward for the local government election 2026.
Like how you declined in
We
2021?
have 4 specific objectives. Number 1, to retain our DA municipalities. You all know that the best run metropolitan municipality in South Africa is the one of the city of Cape Town. You have seen all the audit
Midrand.
outcomes and the service delivery records as produced by both the Auditor General and by Stats SA confirms that where the DA is in municipal government, you get the best service delivery and the best record of good governance.
You say so.
And so our objectives is to attain
low
our
bar.
municipalities. The second objective is to grow the Democratic Alliance footprint. Thirdly, is to govern in more towns. Fourthly, is also to rescue towns. We want to become the biggest party because what we have seen is that smaller parties, it doesn't help voters to vote for smaller parties.
Here they go with this stupidity
Gauteng
again.
is in a mess.
You're a smaller
because
party.
the voters have voted for smaller parties that make absolutely no impact. On the contrary, what they do, they rather side with the ANC, vote for the ANC mayor, and get an ANC mayor, and the towns collapse further right in front of our
This
eyes.
didn't work in 2020,
So
and you're going to do
smaller
it again.
parties at local government level increases the level of political instability. So we are asking voters across South Africa, from this experience that we have seen since the previous election and the collapse of municipalities caused mainly by the ANC and these smaller parties.
Also caused by the DA.
If you rally behind the Democratic Alliance, you get a stable, functional local government and you get service delivery. And so there's a dire reality in South Africa.
What's that, Ivan?
Many municipalities across South Africa have already collapsed. It's already a failed state.
The whole country, buddy.
Almost every single municipality in the Free State, every single municipality
Northwest.
in Northwest
Yep.
have already collapsed.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Now
Where
we
were
are
you?
now talking about the bread and butter politics of citizens. It affects citizens.
This is
There's a
pathetic.
dire reality playing in front of us. What is that the reality at local government level? Well, we have seen that many towns clean water. Even here where we are right now in Gauteng, people failing to supply water, it has collapsed. Severe water insecurity. And even here in Gauteng, we now have a water tanker mafia filling the gaps. Criminals taking over. Electricity supply falling apart, frequent breakdowns, and yet Eskom and NERSA is proposing a 40% increase in the tariffs. We have seen over the last 15 years South Africans becoming poorer in terms of the GDP per capita, and a 40% increase will just simply put many people out of jobs. The road infrastructure very critical. It has crumbled, potholes, no marking, no stormwater repairs and upgrades.
He acts like this is
I mean,
news.
we are now here in Gauteng, the financial capital of the continent, but the roads are crumbling right in front of us. Street lights, mass lights, not working. It's a haven for crime. I traveled yesterday from here, Johannesburg, to Pretoria. Many of the traffic lights were not working. Refuse collection, weeks on end, rubbish piled up outside homes and businesses. Traffic lights are broken, signage are unreadable, public safety, zero public safety capacity, the first function of a government, even before
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt Mr. Ivan Meyer here. Is he giving a presentation to the United Nations or to the European Union or to Washington, D.C. to inform the uninformed about the state of South Africa? We all know this. Good Lord. This is ridiculous. Yeah, they're campaigning for local elections, and the last time around they did the same thing, and they lost. They fell. They lost 30 or 27% of their councillors last time. I don't mean to pick on him. I'm sure he's a really good guy, but this is a complete stupid waste of time.
dumping site this high, and he lives in that ward, not caring, not interested. But there's hope.
No, there isn't any
We
hope.
can't fix this mess.
No, you can't.
But this requires a new government. A government led by the party, the Democratic Alliance.
Dream on.
Because we know how to deliver and we have a track record. Now,
Yeah,
this
you
is
do.
not me
Cape
speaking
Flats.
to you. This is the Auditor General of South Africa.
It's a low
and this
bar.
is Stats SA. They measure, for example, 4 specific things. Access to water, where the DA governs the best. Access to electricity, where the DA governs the best. Refuse collection, where the DA governs the best. Access to sanitation, where the DA governs the best.
Not a single one of those functions is a function of government at any level in any properly functioning society. That's private enterprise. Rubbish removal, sanitation, water, and electricity are not provided by governments. The rare exception being water, sometimes provided by. The DA doesn't get it. They should be getting, look at John, he's busy on his phone there. They should be getting out of this business instead of getting into the business. They really, really don't get it. And, you know, that's a pretty low bar that you're talking about crossing there, Ivan. I mean, pretty low bar.
New approach to reaching voters where they live on matters that matters to them the most.
And how is that?
It is now the realpolitik. They say all politics are local, and therefore our electoral campaigns will focus on local-based issues, but our campaign will be in hyperdrive.
Can your candidates
We are
speak for
now
themselves?
going out everywhere in South Africa, beginning with our annual general meetings in every ward, our DA branches, every constituency in every region and every province, to reaffirm our commitment to the DA and to elect our new branch membership. The blue machine we know is at its strongest, and it is now focused on preparing for the next election. We have a rescue mission for your town. In this coming election, we know that this will be the make or break election for hundreds of towns in South Africa. Many people across towns have decided to fix things themselves. But this is unfair because they pay tax for a municipality. That money is being stolen and no services happens. And so this election, we are asking people no longer to waste their money, their time, and their vote on smaller parties because we see what happened in councils. They side with the ANC and the collapse continue. The DA is preparing to challenge for governance seriously in these places. The DA is now preparing to rescue your town. We can only do this with a strong DA vote. We cannot rescue these towns if you split your vote. Voting against the current failing government in your town needs to result in a strong challenge.
They are completely delusional. My analysis of this being a left-of-center European party operating in an African environment is spot on. They are, what the hell is this? You offering us a book here?
In the Constitution, in Chapter 7.
Oh, the Constitution. You're holding up the Constitution. Hey, I got my Constitution right here, Ivan. You know, they're not reading the room. Bella, NHI, black tax, expropriation without compensation, and they're talking about municipal elections. People aren't going to survive that long. Good God. Talk about missing the boat. These people are completely clueless. Good God.
Candidate nominations, regulations, and Mozilla will now outline all of these detail as well as the time frames that is very critical.
She's an
for the
adult.
elections.
Hopefully she's got something
Our
to say.
purpose is to rescue your town.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ivan, who is the chairperson of the Democratic Alliance, the federal chairperson of the Democratic Alliance. My role as chair of the Federal Council is to talk about the DA's preparations for the election as an organization. And we call the DA organization the Blue Machine for a very good reason. The Blue Machine lives from election to election. So immediately after the May election last year, John gave us 2 days off, and after that we started preparing for the local government election, which will either take place towards the end of 2026 or the beginning of 2027. Now, 2 years is a very short time in politics, and that is why you have to start working immediately. And the very first thing we did was to have a big meeting representing all our provinces to look at what went right in the election and what went wrong in the election.
Mostly went wrong, sweetheart.
And we always, immediately after an election, learn the lessons and then try and incorporate those lessons into our plans going forward. Now, one of the things we do is revise our candidate nomination regulations before every election so that we could look at any place that there was a hiccup or a misalignment or a problem and see if we can improve our system to deal with it. So shortly after the national election last year, we asked all provinces to submit any amendments they wanted to have to the candidate nomination regulations. Now, the DA has very detailed candidate nomination regulations that prescribes fair processes for everybody to ensure that we get the very best talent South Africa can offer. And let me underline that. It's not the very best talent the DA can offer. It's the very best talent South Africa can offer to come into the ranks of the DA and contest for a place, an electable place, on our lists. So we don't fish in the same small DA pond over and over again. The entire purpose is to say, let's look to see who out there is passionate about their community, who is at one or aligned to the DA's value set, and is prepared to work day and night to rescue South Africa.
Like Ronaldo Khuz.
And the public representatives in the DA do that and do conform with that notion, and they get performance managed to ensure that they do and that they retain that idea. But there are many people outside the DA that we're wanting to bring in too. And our candidate search and our candidate nomination regulations are designed to do that. On the 2nd of December, we had our first virtual meeting to discuss the updating of our candidate nomination regulations, clause by clause. And this year we had an in-person meeting yesterday on the 27th of January to finalize our candidate nomination regulations.
John Steenhuisen looks like he's sitting on pins. He just can't take this himself. We're not the only ones bored. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, they do sound like Trudeau, Neil Kruger. They're completely clueless. I'm so disappointed. You know, and I so wanted to interview Helen Zille a few years ago, and she's turned out to be such a huge disappointment. And not because I disagree with policies. It's not that I disagree with the DA's policies, but these people they are whistling past the cemetery. They're just whistling past the cemetery. They really are completely clueless. My goodness.
Now, Ivan told you what a dire state our municipalities are in.
No, but
certainly
Ivan
outside
just
of the
told
Western
us.
Cape. And you will never get growth and jobs if you have failing government. Growth and jobs only comes from investment.
I appreciate you all got to go, but you abandoned me, making me stay here with this all by myself. I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning for y'all. Nah, you can go if you got to go. Thanks for being here.
Where there isn't clean and reliable water, where you can't flush a toilet, and you can't transport your goods because the transport infrastructure has collapsed. No one. And that is why it is no coincidence that more and more investment is leaving Gauteng and coming to the Western Cape. Now, the DA is not a Western Cape party.
No, more and more investments leaving South Africa.
As we are about every other part of our country. And we want Gauteng to work and continue to be the financial capital of the African continent. We need it to be. And we need it to be so that this economic machine can drive the investment that will create the growth and jobs that we desperately need to succeed as a country. And that will only happen with good governance. Now, good governance depends on the voters. And people often say to me, Zilla, don't blame the voters. I'm not blaming the voters. I'm stating the basic.
John Zilla looks like he's terrified. John Zilla looks like, or not John Steenhuisen looks like he's being held hostage. Look at him. Could somebody please, John, just give us a universal signal for distress. John Steenhuisen looks like he's being held hostage. Look at him.
And because of the brokenness, and because of the fact that deployed cadres control the administration, and because of the fact that there's so many vested interests, it makes it incredibly difficult for a coalition to govern. And the stronger the DA is in any kind of coalition, obviously, the better. And if the DA does emerge as the biggest party in all the metros, then we're in a position to put up an executive mayoral candidate and to make sure that we can follow the DA's tried and tested recipe of turning things around and making things successful. We have that experience, but in Cape Town I was very lucky when I became mayor in a 7-party coalition. The ANC hadn't been in power for that long. And so there wasn't that much brokenness that had to be fixed. That's not the same in Gauteng. You've had ANC government for almost 30 years, and there is a lot to fix. And with the exit of a lot of capital and skills from Gauteng, it shrinks the rate base and it makes it more and more difficult to do so. So we're not exaggerating when we say to people that
like a
time is
hostage.
genuinely running out. And there comes a point of no return.
Oh my God, I got up
So,
for this. I stayed up
that
for
was
this.
the purpose of our candidate selection process review. How are we going to find the very best people who are up to this crucial challenge? And how are we going to prepare them for the rigors and the incredible burdens that they're going to face going forward? So this year, we have decided to run what we call a Catalyst program. We advertised very widely for it in September last year. We got a lot of applicants, and we chose the very best people with skills, a track record. These aren't entry-level people. These are people who have had some serious experience before and who now believe that it's make or break for South African local government and who want to come and throw their skills into the DA to help us rescue our towns and cities. And out of the many applicants we got, we chose 77 candidates who are going to be on our year-long Catalyst program to prepare people for the rigors of the candidate selection process, in which they will have to compete. There's no guarantee to anyone that they will be on an electable position on a list. But to be sure that we are finding ways of being a magnet to skilled people, mid-level professionals, high-level professionals who want to come into politics because they understand that unless we fix the towns and cities politically through good governance, the rest is unattainable.
The only magnets for talented South Africans are in Auckland, London, Berlin, Munich, Washington, D.C., New York, not in the DA.
2026-27 local government election, our applications open on the 1st of February.
Well, you can go apply,
So
folks.
that's when people can start submitting their CVs. We've got a very clear online process for applications.
I'll submit mine.
And we are going to call far and wide for people to apply.
Does that include the U.S.?
Then,
I'll send mine
on
in.
the 1st of March, we will be opening applications for mayoral candidates in our metros. Obviously, our metros are going to be ground zero in the selection, especially the Gauteng metros. We're on the search for the brightest and the best and the most capable from inside the DA's ranks and from outside the DA's ranks. Because we don't close the door to talented people from outside.
I want
we
Rustenburg.
look actively for talented people
I'm right here.
outside.
Put me in, Coach.
And
Put
I
me
recall
in.
many years ago in the early 2000s when we first advertised for candidates, the media all laughed at us. None of you, because I don't think many of you were around then.
Well, they're laughing at you
But
now.
the media all laughed at us because they said, don't you have, Mr. Mbedges is an exception, but nevertheless. Most of
One
you
old
weren't here
journalist.
then. And the media all laughed at us. And they said, don't you have enough people inside the DA? Why are you advertising? And we said, of course we have enough people inside. But there are a lot of people outside that we would also like to have. Because they're good and they're coming in and competing with our
Like
candidates.
Trisha DeLille?
And they prevent us from becoming complacent. And we have to be on point in everything that we do. And so that is our philosophy, and that is how we function. And so we're on a big search for metro mayoral candidates inside and outside the party. So we've got a timetable for the entire election campaign. And the Blue Machine does things on time and within budget. And we've got a very good...
John's reading the tea leaves in his coffee cup there. Look at it. Look at he's and he's looking at the future there. I didn't know he was a warlock. Look at that.
We're on it, as they say, the young kids say. Ons is op it. And we are going to put every ounce of our energy and commitment to continue our rescue mission in South Africa by becoming the biggest party in the major metropolitan municipalities of South Africa. Once we've done that, it will be a critical watershed to saving the Gauteng economy, to putting Gauteng on a path of hope and economic growth and creating jobs and helping our country become the success we know it can be. Well, thank you very much indeed, and I'm now going to ask my colleague Willie, one of the two co-conspirators.
If you
The old comp is going to come up now, folks.
Thank you very much, Helen. Good morning, colleagues from the media, and thank you to everybody for being here. We've got a full house again. We had a full house on Saturday, so thank you very much. You are always welcome, and it's a privilege for us to share with you our vision with regards to all the various aspects. We are now going to do the question session. I would ask that you, before you ask your question, just wait for the roaming mic so that the people that's online can also hear the question that you're asking. Please state your name as well as the name of the news outlet that you are representing and the person that you direct your question to. I will decide ultimately then.
Wyatt Independent News. What are you guys on? Is it Mandrax? Are you doing Daga? A little cocaine. I'd like some of whatever you guys are on. Okay, that's my first question.
Can I get some hands, please? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to start here in the front. Please. Good morning. Just wait for the mic a moment.
Thank you for the subscription.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Mzwande Lembeje from the SABC.
Of course.
I think two questions. One is to Mr. Steenhuisen on his take, obviously, on the GNU. I think his closing remark was that if we feel, I'm just going to paraphrase it, if we feel we're being ignored in the GNU, perhaps it may be time to walk out. You didn't say it that way. Is that what you meant? So if you feel that the ANC is not responsive to some of the concerns that you've raised, so is the last resort to walk out of the GNU? The other question, I think it's going to go to the chairpersons. It's about the municipalities and the local government related stuff. Obviously, you've always held the Western Cape as the shining example. But the DA from 2016 has been basically, in the majority of years from then and now, been the one that has been in the driving seat of the municipalities, particularly Johannesburg and Tshwane. Obviously, there will be changes along the way. But if you look at the years, it's actually the majority of the years from 2016 until now.
Yes.
That would be the DA. But the kind of the decay that you've been highlighting, so it really didn't start now.
Good point.
How do you then apportion that blame to only the ANC aligned and not take some sort of responsibility, because some of it really has been under your watch? Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Great question.
It's Yanda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa. Just following on Mzwandile's questions, in relation to the Expropriation Act, are you still planning to test its constitutionality in court, or are you still going to wait for the engagement with the President, Mr. Steenhuisen, first, before following through with any legal challenge? Excuse me. And then the second question is linked to the first. Fikile Mbalula talking about Clause 19 not applying to bills that have already been passed. I know you addressed it briefly in your address, but was Dean McPherson given enough time to respond? Vincent Magwenya seems to believe that he was given enough time to respond and share any concerns that he has. Was that done, and what was the response? Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Thembi Letsele with Bloomberg News. I think my questions are for the leader of the DA. The first one is, during the coalition talks, there was talk of red lines that the DA had. Does the DA still have red lines, and what are they as of today? And then the second question, you mentioned the market fluctuations, sort of the instability that we're seeing every time there are these skirmishes within the GNU. How will we know that the day has arrived when the DA cannot have an influence on the economy, as you mentioned? I'm trying to get a sense of, obviously, I imagine you don't like it when there is this negative movement in the economy. So how...
These are actually very good questions from the journalists, and they're acting like real journalists for a change. It's a nice change of pace. Very good questions here. Shwane's been under DA control mostly for the past 10 years.
Repeat quickly. We've got Zwanele Mbete. The first question then to John with regards to the GNU. And then I would like to direct the next question to Helen with regards to the Western Cape as an example and what happened in Johannesburg and Tshwane since 2016. Zianda, your question about the Expropriation Act, whether we'll go to court or not, and will be directed to John. And then the matter of Fikile Mbalula and Article 19 as well. Temile, your question about the red lines as well as the market fluctuations will both be directed to John. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Thanks very much for the questions. There's no point in being in government if you can't govern. There's no point in bringing 3.5 million votes to a table.
Oh my God, he sounds like it's a lot. You lost 600,000.
Direction of that government or the programs of that government. And that is what I was trying to say very, very clearly, that we regard the GNU as South Africa's most precious asset at the moment in terms of what it holds in its hands, the future of the country, the future of the economy, the future of our people. And that is why all parties to the GNU need to be good stewards and good responsible stewards of the GNU. But being a responsible steward means that you have to be a reliable coalition partner and a trustworthy coalition partner as well. So when you make decisions and you don't consult the rest of your party, the parties in the coalition, without even giving a courtesy call to the leaders, knowing how contentious the expropriation bill has been,
we've paused,
knowing the fact that you received a 2-page submission from the Minister of Public Works with a legal opinion from senior counsel attached, pointing out the constitutional problems with the bill, and you simply go ahead and do it, and the leaders of your coalition find out about it on social media, that is not being a good steward or a good partner of the GNU. And that is our gripe. Now, I believe that we could quite easily have found a way through this particular impasse had there been a discussion amongst leaders. There's a number of options. There was nothing instructing the president to sign this bill. There was no urgency on it. We could have had a discussion about it. We could have decided to refer it back to Parliament. We could have amended it there using the GNU's majority in Parliament to come up with a bill that met all of these requirements. Or the president could have simply called us in and given us his reasons why he was going to proceed. Instead, all brushed aside.
Okay, I'm going to pause that. We're not going to listen to John Steenhuisen because this is the same jellyfish response. Your feelings are hurt, and you are bum-hurt that the ANC and the Ramaphosa didn't consult the DA and ignored you, and you found out about it through a press release. Well, okay, I appreciate your feelings, but you're ignoring those 3.5 million people you say voted for you, which is 500,000 less than in 2016. And you're also ignoring millions of South Africans who are concerned, who are not having their voice heard. They don't give two shits about your municipal elections. The country can't survive. People are starving. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. They're starving right now. And you're talking about your election campaign for 2026. Get your head out of your ass, DA, and start listening to South Africans, or you're going to be irrelevant. Thank you for the super chat, Eric. I do appreciate that this hour. Thank you very kindly. All right, let's listen to John Steenhuisen.
Well, something was done the 6th administration suddenly makes it all right for the 7th administration. That's not how coalitions work. There's no government in the world that works like that. Zianda, there were large, as I say, submissions made by the Minister of Public Works on this bill, along with a very clear...
I don't care about the submissions by the Minister of Public Works. He just came into the government in June 29th. This has been an issue since 2018. You were in opposition. You fought against it. You stood against it. There were hundreds of thousands of submissions from the public that were ignored by the ANC and by Ramaphosa. We don't give two shits about Dean McPherson's submissions. We want to hear about South Africans. Good God.
Two wholly contradictory procedures within the bill, which is going to make it impossible for any court to adjudicate should the bill be tested. And it's that concern that was raised in the opinion, and it's that concern that has exercised the minister. And had we just sat around a table and had a discussion about this, we could have ironed these things out. And so we've got to move forward. We've got to move forward in trying to find ways to deal with these things going forward. But it cannot be simply a case of it's our way or the highway. And it's a lesson the DA had to learn as well. When we started out in coalitions, you've got to understand that everyone in a coalition is a minority party. There's no majority party in a coalition. And you can't just carry on doing what you want to do. I mean, I remember the times we were accused of being bullies and every name under the sun. You learn within the coalition environment that you need all the parties in that coalition to help you get through what you need to get through. And you can't just simply treat coalition partners.
All right, I've spent a third of my adult life living in Europe. I don't need a lesson on how coalitions work. The only thing you have in Europe are coalitions because they're so fragmented and they can't govern themselves, just like they can't defend themselves. That's why they need that live under the skirt of American defense. This is not solving anything. And he's answering one question. There were 6 questions there. I don't know how long I can take this, guys. I'm not abandoning it now, but I mean, this is really going in circles here. Yeah, it's just crazy. I've written down things here that just keep going on about that. Are these people jellyfish? Is that what they really are? I mean, you know, and it's wow. This is what's so sad about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that the DA doesn't get that they don't get it. They don't get what they don't get. How sad is that? It's pathetic.
Yet? No, not yet. I don't believe that. I think the coalition is relatively new. But if this current trend continues of simply giving a tin ear to the views, opinions, thoughts, and ideas of DA ministers in government, then there really is no point us being there. We might as well be sitting in opposition in Parliament and in the country, because if our ideas aren't going to be listened to and taken on board, there really is no point in us being there. So when will we leave? When the Constitution is trashed and our economy is crashed. Anything
That's today.
Does one of those
That's
two
today,
things
buddy.
is a red line, and we will make it very clear when that time has come. I'm really hoping, as I said on Saturday, that this this particular situation is cause for a reset in the relations within the GNU.
Nope.
And that there will be some consideration now given to the views, thoughts, and opinions of all parties to the GNU. And as I said, we're not the only party that's upset about the way that this has been handled. There are at least 3 other parties. There's 4 of your coalition partners are unhappy about the way they've been treated. One even referring to it being stabbed in the back. That clearly is a warning light on the dashboard. And if you don't attend to that problem, it's going to cause much bigger problems down the line. Thanks.
Yep, they've crossed all the red lines. Okay, we can get the
John,
next
thank
5
you.
questions.
I think there's 2 questions. The one about Fikile Mbalula and Article 19, you touched on it. Is there anything else that we need on that?
You know, I said it applies to everything.
It applies to everything. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much. With regards to the market fluctuations, it's just very important to show that after the briefing on Saturday, we saw what the effect was on the currency of South Africa. And it's important that the ANC realizes that the stabilization of this GNU is important for macroeconomical aspects of the country. Just to come back to that last question with regards
ANC
to
doesn't
market
care about that.
fluctuations.
They're busy
Helen,
looting.
I'm going to hand over to you with regards to the questions that was directed to you.
The ANC doesn't care about the market
Thank you very much,
fluctuations.
Mr. Mbeje. Your question was, the DA has been in government for some time in Tshwane and in Johannesburg.
Not in Johannesburg. That's
and
factually incorrect.
we can't place the blame solely on the ANC. Now, you'll recall that in my introduction, I said that it was easier to turn around Cape Town than it's going to be to turn around Tshwane and Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni and Nelson Mandela Bay and eThekwini and all of the others, Mangaung, all of the other metros. Now, the reason is that the ANC hasn't managed to get rid of all the competent managers yet and replace them with their deployed cadres. They haven't yet managed to take away all the tender-rich functions and place them into entities where their people can control what is happening and then ensure the tenders go to cadres, etc. There hasn't yet been a sabotaging of all of the infrastructure so that these services can be contracted out to ANC cadres who run water trucks and who run a range of other services that have to step in when the municipality can't deliver basic services. So when I took over Cape Town, a lot of things were going downhill. The organogram had been totally broken. Random appointments were being made all over the place. There was a lot of corruption in the system. But there were still some very good managers. The organization hadn't been broken up into little units that could be managed outside the line functions that look after due process and stop corruption. And there was still a legacy of functionality in the city. So stuff still worked. There hadn't been 30 years of no maintenance, for example. Once you have 30 years of no maintenance, it is unbelievably difficult to catch up. And I've often thought, whoa, if I was the mayor of Johannesburg, what would I do? Where would I start? Well, we could start because we stopped the whole decimation of middle management that was underway. And I'll tell you a very brief story very quickly because it's relevant. I'm sorry, I'm taking time.
Please do.
Somebody phoned me. I didn't even remember him. And he said, I just want to thank you. I'm going on retirement now. I'm 65. But thank you because when you came mayor of Cape Town, you stopped all of the process of the ANC moving us all out of our positions. This person was a person of colour. And he said, I would have been moved out of my position and I would not have been able to retire at 65 on pension. And the fact that the DA1 meant that we had uninterrupted good management and we could continue to do that. So then we could start focusing the budget on maintenance and on development. And we still had good people in the finance department and we could get and focus on the few corrupt people like Mr. 10% and other people and move them out of the organization. But it was still a going concern. And the backlog and the collapse had not nearly been as profound as I see in Johannesburg every day when I'm walking around. So, when the DA, and I'm not even saying if, when the DA takes over our metros, the first thing you have to do when you're dealing with this complete collapse and deployed cadres everywhere, you saw what the Supreme Court of Appeal has said about the appointment of Floyd Brink in Johannesburg, for example, and other things. That wasn't the Supreme Court of Appeal, it was the High Court, my apologies. You saw what he said about that. Your first job is to try and stabilize the finances from bankrupt municipalities that have huge debts and borrowings that they can't repay. That's your first job, stabilize the finance. You have to move out corrupt people, which in our labor regulatory environment is very, very difficult unless you have a smoking gun. You have to get the people who can do the job into the right positions. And throughout all of that, you are being fought by the administration. Who are trying to get you out, who are trying to undermine you. Now you've got a shaky 9-party coalition. And just someone has to be offered an overseas trip or a this or a that to cross the floor and bring down the government. You don't have the stability to do the job that is required. Without stability, you can't stop corruption. Because every time you move in on a corrupt group of people or entity, they go around your back to the other people and say, the DA is a bunch of racists and you must fight them from within the coalition. And that's what happened to Solly Masimanga, for example. And so, without stability, you can achieve nothing. And if you have a coalition of 9 partners, you can't have stability. Now, in Tshwane, we actually were making some progress.
So why are you in the government of national unity then if you have a coalition of 9 partners? That makes 10 parties. That's the GNU exactly. So why are you in the national coalition then?
To crash the quorum, to make it impossible for us to pass budgets, and to make it impossible for us to do the work of the municipality. They put us under administration because they said we couldn't do that necessary work, but they put us under administration because they deliberately prevented us from doing that work. When they did that, the city had a budget surplus. When we won in court, and the court said you may not deliberately crash a quorum in a council to prevent it from doing its work so that the council can be put under administration. When the court said that and we got back, the city was in billions of debt because it had been looted. That's after nearly 2 years of administration by the ANC. So you must understand what you are up against in these Gauteng metros. Voting for the ANC has consequences. And nowhere do you see the consequences as clearly as you're seeing them in Johannesburg. Tragic. It's an absolute tragedy. I was raised here. I was born here and raised here.
Yeah, then explain to me what's going on in Knysna and all the Western Cape municipalities where you've cocked everything up.
Base. Maybe with 1 or 2 coalition partners who are committed to fixing Joburg as well. It's what the Afrikaners call an onbegonnen taak. You can't do it, right? Now, people may not like the DA particularly. We're not perfect. No political party is. But we're certainly the very, very best there is on offer.
You're right, easy.
And we're the only one, frankly, the only one, that has the skills, the capacity, the history, the experience, and the policies to turn down these metros. But for the first 5 years, we will only be stabilizing the finance, only be stopping corruption, and only getting the right people in the right positions. And when you've done that, then you can have liftoff. In Cape Town, we could show changes almost instantly because the rot was like an apple just on the one side. It wasn't right through the entire fruit. And that's what makes a massive difference. I'm sorry I've taken a bit of time answering that question, but you need to get the critical importance of stopping the rot early, because there is a time when you are beyond the point of no return.
Yeah, that would be South Africa's infrastructure. Wow.
Wow. Thank you very much, Helen. Let's take the next round. Can I have hands? I'm taking it from this side. 1, 2,
I have no more questions
3.
for you guys.
Can we just get the roaming mic? The next questions, I will go to the other side.
Good day, Buleli Treaty Jones from ENCA. Directed to Mr. Steenhuisen. Are you looking at, as the DA, proposing further internal mechanisms to address potential policy conflict or contradictions in the GNU where you don't reach agreement with other parties or mainly with the ANC? That's number one. And of course, to Helen, the ANC and Freedom Front Plus voted to oust the DA from the mayor's office in Swellendam in the Western Cape. We've seen a similar pattern in other municipalities where the Freedom Front has been working with the ANC to oust DA mayors. Are you concerned about this? Will you be speaking to the Freedom Front Plus because you've been having a healthy relationship in many municipalities working together and voting together? Thank you.
Next person.
I hate this multiple
Pule has
questions.
sort of asked my questions. My name is Liza Gatando. I'm from Times Live. The only question that is outstanding, just to add on to Pule's question around Swellendam, what is the state of your relationship with the Freedom Front Plus?
Yeah, good question.
of today. And John, perhaps can we have a reaction from you on the US president deciding to suspend all foreign development assistance?
Well, thank you very much. My name is Lunga from the Mail and Guardian. I just have a few questions. Fikile Mbalula did say that the DA was aware that there was these bills as you went into government with the ANC. Does the DA feel trapped that they were put in ministerial positions where they had to implement policies that they would normally be against? I'm talking about the issue of the Bella.
No, they weren't trapped. The DA got no real power. I've covered this a million times. They have no security cluster, the important things that matter. They don't have the foreign minister. They don't have finance, none of that stuff, no electricity, nothing that mattered. They were given the screwed up ministries like home affairs and agriculture that need to be repaired so the ANC could take credit for it. So they don't feel trapped. They put themselves in this boat.
Policies simply because she is from the DA. He's a minister of everyone. It's just not a DA minister. And also, with Helen, you just said that they if the more people are in a coalition, the more unstable it becomes. Would you have rather had the ANC and ousted the others in the GNU to totally just have a two-party coalition? And also, maybe lastly, where do you stand with the? 2 weeks ago, you were calling for Nchaveni to step down as the DA with so many other parties. The issue of JP Smith, if you're raising transparency and allowing the law to take its course, would you not rather have the two MECs in Western Cape removed until they clear their names? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lunga. Yeah, that was 4 questions. We've got quite a lot of questions. I'm going to not direct specific questions to anyone. John, I think there's a whole range of issues that you can touch on as well as Helen. I'm going to start with you, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's my point,
Yes,
Andy.
we will be proposing mechanisms. It's very clear that there does need to be a far more high-level engagement that happens between the leaders of parties more regularly. If one looks at the coalition in Great Britain that existed, they had what was called a quad, where the 2 leaders and 2 others from each of their parties would attend and thrash out issues before they went to cabinet. So I definitely do think there's scope for more engagement between the leaders of the political parties. The clearinghouse mechanism that exists does not have terms of reference. And the clearinghouse mechanism itself cannot be a substitute for the statement of intent, where clause 19.3 is very, very clear that that there has to be sufficient consensus. Sufficient consensus is clearly defined within that statement of intent. And again, this was a document that was signed freely, willingly, and with open eyes by all parties to the government of national unity. And it wasn't something that was inserted later. It was there in black and white at the beginning of the process.
Very quickly, since this is boring, strung together, one of the reasons why things are more expensive in Cape Town is because it's geographically limited. There's nowhere to go. So rents are very high. Rents drive up the cost of goods and services. If you have to pay 10,000 Rand more for your mortgage or your rental space than you do in the Eastern Cape or in Gauteng, then you're going to have to sell things at a higher price, and that's what drives things up. The very limited space and land available means that cost of housing is also much higher too. And the confined space jammed in between Table Mountain, Lion's Head, and the water means that, the cost of housing is much higher. So all of that plays a role. That's why things are so expensive there, among other reasons.
We can work together. It's been unfortunate that there seems to have been a localized dynamic in the Western Cape, and I think there are a variety of reasons for that. However, we look forward to finalizing the stabilization pact that we've been pushing backwards and forwards between each other for the last 2 months. We've now got the Western Cape's views and opinions on it, and we'll obviously look to move towards concluding that stabilization pact.
Poor guy. I feel for Steenhuisen there with the cold. That sucks.
In terms of the funding, I'm very concerned about it. I'm very concerned about the signalling and what this may mean for broader agreements like AGOA further down the line, which we know is supposed to be finalised in September of this year. I'm concerned as well because PEPFAR funding and funding from that is a large cornerstone of the funding for our HIV/AIDS response
because
in
you won't
South
fund
Africa.
it yourself.
Which is another reason why we perhaps should be very cautious about how we proceed with NHI, because there might be a new budget item that we're going to have to provide for, which would be to fill that gap that will be left by PEPFAR and that funding that's been frozen over the time. And I think it's another reason why we should proceed with caution, with just simply trashing the healthcare sector over an ideological desire rather than something that's based on costed, evidence-based decision-making. Lunga, we don't feel trapped. We went into the coalition with our eyes wide open. We knew exactly what the risks were, but equally we knew exactly what the risks were for us not to go into the coalition. And I certainly think that the benefits that we've seen for South Africa, both internationally and at home, have been significant and are certainly moving in the right direction. Of course, in any coalition.
That's another reason.
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result Hunter, the search engine.
Yeah, we don't care about you, JT. You're right. That's another reason why it's higher, because all the Airbnbs.
There are going to be areas where we need to compromise, where we need to retrim our sails. That's a natural flow of what happens in coalitions. That's why most parties like to get a majority, because you don't then have to temper what you want to do by the views and opinions of other parties. But the people of South Africa chose not to give any party a majority, and we must work together. And so, yes, we are prepared to compromise, but we will not compromise on matters that trash the Constitution and on matters that will crash the economy. We went into this coalition with our eyes wide open, and it was for that reason that Minister McPherson addressed his letter to the President last year, midway through, I think it was in the opening few months of the coalition, saying to the President, I know this bill is on your desk. However, these are the concerns that I would have to have if I had to implement it. And attached to that was an opinion which the department had received from senior counsel, pointing out the very obvious flaws in the bill, including the constitutionality of the contradictory clauses. Now, ministers, when they're sworn into office, don't swear allegiance to the President. They swear allegiance to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and swear to uphold the Constitution and all other law of the Republic.
Correct.
Now, when something is patently unconstitutional and when something is patently incorrect, and the minister who'd be responsible for implementing that points this out and just simply gets a no, with no guidance or explanation as to what the correct way to proceed would be, and that the leaders of the parties then, without any consultation, find out about this on social media, that's not how coalitions work. And I think it's been badly handled, and I think that that's why there needs to be a meeting with the senior leaders of the coalition, and why I've sought a meeting with Mr. Ramaphosa directly so that I could share these views with him to his face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Helen, would you take the two questions about the coalition size as well as the JP Smith matter, please?
Yes. Right. As you all know, the GNU is a coalition, is a form of coalition.
Yep.
Now, in a normal coalition, you have a situation, a starting situation, where no party got 50% plus one of the vote, and they would like to get above 50%, so they look for coalition partners to bring them above 50%. And once they've got above 50%, they want to have the stability, they don't want to have too many partner parties, but it's often very useful to have a reserve outside that if your partner party gives you a lot of trouble inside the coalition, you can have plan B. That's what I learned very much during the coalitions that I managed. However, when we signed the statement of intent, which was in itself a huge education for me, clause 24 said that the original signatories to the statement of intent would have to be agreed amongst themselves before new people could join this government of national unity. And that was in clause 24. If you read it, I haven't got the word for word in my head, but it basically says, for the people who agree to come into this, and that's when we signed it, if any people are added, or if any parties are added, it'll have to be in consultation with each other. And at that time, and at the time that we elected President Ramaphosa as president of the country, because that was when the statement of intent became operable, there were three founding parties. There was the DA, there was the ANC, and there was the Inkatha Freedom Party. Within 4 or 5 days, the president was announcing all sorts of other people who joined.
Right.
Without
you weren't even looking for
any respect for clause 24, as if it didn't exist. And I
So
could
why
only
did you
conclude
stay?
to myself, either they couldn't care that it exists, or they don't know that it exists, or they're doing whatever they want anyway. And that was our first huge red light that the ANC wasn't taking this seriously.
That was in
and
June.
was just continuing as if they could call the shots entirely. And you may remember that I was on television with Fikile and Balula, and I
Smiling,
pointed this out to him,
joking,
and a lot of
laughing.
people didn't like that I did point it out to him, of course. So, the only parties that can actually bring down the government are the DA and the ANC. Every other party in the government is there by grace and favour of President Ramaphosa. And if you are a minister or a deputy minister or a chair of a committee or whatever it is you are, you have to please President Ramaphosa because he is the person who holds your fate in his hands. And of course, that's why the ANC wants a whole lot of smaller parties, because then they have a little hallelujah chorus that supports them on everything that they do. And it's very convenient with the ANC not always to have to fight with us. They get their proxies to fight with us. And then it looks different. But their proxies, of course, are going to side with the ANC, no matter what they said in the election, because Ramaphosa can relieve them from their positions. Now, we are not there by grace and favour of the president. We are there by grace and favour of the voters. The voters gave us the balance of power. And so we go there to represent the 3.5 million people who voted for us. And we have to say to those people, we can't get everything we want. Because if we wanted everything we wanted, we had to get 50% plus one of the vote. But we're in a coalition to share power. And so don't get upset with us when we have to compromise now and again.
All you do is compromise.
Because we didn't get enough votes. If you don't want us to compromise, give us more votes. But the ANC has to say that too. And the existence of what I call the Hallelujah Chorus does not mean to say that they have any muscle in government, but it's very useful for the ANC, as we saw in the clearinghouse. I won't go into that, but in the clearinghouse. And in fact, there are two parties that can bring down the government, and so two major coalition partners in the GNU are the DA and the ANC. The JP Smith thing. Okay, JP Smith, right.
Oh, I forgot about that.
The suspension of people who have been raided by the police. Now, Jordan Hill-Lewis is the mayor of Cape Town. And he has had to determine whether to suspend, I think so far, it is 4 councillors who have been accused of infringements that might warrant suspension. And on each occasion, he has looked at
the totality,
the prima facie evidence against that person. Now, I'll take the example of the most common one, issue that's been raised, and that is the example of Malusi Boy, who was arrested and now charged on several quite serious counts of corruption involving housing projects.
Yep.
After Malusi's office was searched, the police had a discussion with Jordan, and Jordan said, as a courtesy, could I know what the prima facie evidence is, untested evidence is that you have against him, so that I can see whether this is a political hit squad or whether there is some real substantive stuff to which he has to answer. The police weren't obliged to do that, but they said, yes, there's a lot of substantive stuff. And untested evidence, but prima facie evidence, convinced the mayor that there was a serious case that Malusi had to answer, and he therefore suspended him. In another case where there was an allegation that an electricity meter had been bypassed of a house belonging to one of his mayoral executive committee members, he went into it. It was a fact that it had been bypassed. He suspended him, but then the member could prove that other people lived there and that they had done that even though the house was in his name. So then he was reinstated, obviously. But there was a prima facie case against him because in a house owned by him, the electricity meter had been bypassed. In another case, somebody was accused of rape, and Jordan was convinced that there was no prima facie evidence, and there was a very convincing argument that it might have been a revenge motive. And so he said, we'll wait for the court case to run its course. Okay. We won't be the jury and judge. It's a criminal trial. That's a good move. The person was acquitted. So Jordan made the right decision. And in another case that I'm not so familiar with the details of. So all I know is that Jordan looks at what evidence there is. And he's doing exactly the same with the J.P. Smith case. In the J.P. Smith case, he's asked the police to extend to him the same courtesy as they extended to him with Malusi Boy. And he says before he takes a decision to suspend, he's got to check whether this is a political hit squad or whether there's something genuine. And he then says, give me a briefing on the prima facie evidence that still has to be tested in court, that is untested now, but I, as the responsible mayor, have to see if he's got a genuine case to answer. And that briefing, I understand, should be happening about today, and Jordan will make that decision on the basis of what he sees before him. Now, if you compare every other case that has been raised around issues, we demand that people be suspended when we believe there's prima facie evidence.
Okay, she's just going on and on here. So I have to say that this is probably the best answer we've gotten in this whole press conference, this one from Helen Zilla, about what happens. And it's the same sort of thing leaders have to make, decisions you make in the military. As a commander, you have to make a decision whether it warrants action or an investigation. And we use non-judicial punishment. We use informal investigations. It's called a 15-6 to investigate allegations, because allegations are raised against people all the time, and that doesn't mean that they're real. And sometimes it looks like it's real, like, for instance, the case of the guy who owned a house and someone else was using his house and they stole the electricity. So because the house was in his name, someone dropped dimes on him and they suspended him. Never should have been suspended. But anyway, so yeah, I get where they're coming from. But let's get back to the issues at hand here. I don't want to quit hearing about you're there by the grace and favor of the voters. Yeah, okay, all right, fine.
Saying, I want to see the prima facie evidence, untested. It's a courtesy. The police don't have to show him, but he's got to make a solid judgment.
Could we wrap this up, please? Billy, wrap it up.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Colleagues, we are running out of time. I'm going to allow 2 more questions that we had on this side. There will be an opportunity afterwards for questions as well. Gert? Okay. John says his voice might not make it, but we will assist with that. Let's go to Gert van der Westhuizen in front here.
Give him a jab. Give him a jab.
Mr. Steenhuisen, I would like to know, over the weekend it became clear that there are huge ideological differences between the ANC and the DA.
It was clear to me in
Will
June.
you ever be able to work properly together in the GNU because of that? Will proper consensus ever be possible?
No.
And Fikile Mbalula also said over the weekend there was no agreement beforehand to put a moratorium on legislation that was passed in the previous administration. What would be your comment on that, please?
Doesn't really matter.
Thank you very much. Can we have the last one here, right behind? Thank you.
Good day, John. My name is Amanda Khoza. I'm from News 24. The Cabinet Lekgotla is taking place tomorrow. When exactly are you meeting the President?
That was so short, I'm going to allow a last one there at the back, please. Thank you.
That's a good question.
Good afternoon, Ferial Hafaji from the Daily Maverick.
Oh, I know
May
her.
I please check with you, Mr. Steenhuisen, given the rising tensions, do you think the GNU will last the year? And secondly, under what conditions will you withhold support for passing the budget come February? Thank you.
Thank you very much. John, we've got it's 4 questions, but you can, if you are fine with it with your voice.
Yeah, should be fine.
Sure, thanks.
Pharaoh Hafaji.
Thank you very much, Gert, for that. Yes, there are ideological differences between the DA and the ANC. In fact, there are broad ideological differences between the 10 parties to the GNU. But so too are there broad ideological differences in coalitions around the world. Broad ideological differences between the SPD and the FDP in Germany. Broad ideological differences between the Lib Dems in Britain and the Conservative Party. All over the world. It's a whole view about coalitions and made up of different parties. And there are different parties because different parties have different ideas and they attract different types of voters. But ideological differences shouldn't be a gulf when you're coming together around a common set of objectives. And so, yes, the ANC have their views, we have ours, but surely we can agree that economic growth and jobs are the primary focus of this country. Because without economic growth and jobs, we're not going to be able to lift people out of poverty. We're not going to end hunger. We're not going to create better opportunities for more people. We're not going to have a government that's able to spend more on social infrastructure. Because without that economic growth, we're going to continue the way we've been for the last 20 years, where
there is no growth, buddy.
Our country just slides further and further into debt and closer to a fiscal cliff. So in a country where it is in a deep crisis like South Africa, we can agree on the big things that need to be done to get the economy moving. And that's why I've said we entered the government to grow the economy and to create jobs. And everything that we do as a government should surely be looked at through the lens of creating jobs, growing the economy and ending poverty.
None of that's happening.
And we should discard everything that does not speak to those key priorities. And that when issues that threaten the economic stability of the country, like an entirely uncosted, untested, untried NHI.
Thank you for the super chat.
It poses a significant risk to the balance sheet of South Africa, poses a significant risk to the social stability of the country, and it poses a huge risk to the sustainability of healthcare in the country. But we all agree that we need universal access to basic healthcare for all South Africans, regardless of their income.
No, we don't all agree.
Or geography.
We don't all agree.
And surely we can work together to fixing that. So let's start by fixing the public healthcare system. Let's focus on public-private partnerships like we've done with Operation Vulindlela. Let's rather start with the suggestions made by the private hospital groups, by the practitioners, all of whom have signed a big red warning line. There's a problem here.
Yeah, it's useless. Stephen van Vyk, I'm going to recognize your super chat. Thank you for that. Coalitions don't work anywhere in the world. Only the U.S. system prevents that from happening. For the most part, that's pretty true. One of the few. Yeah. So once again, they're droning. He's answering questions, so I'm not going to beat them up for this. They're answering questions of the press. And there are actually a couple good questions there. I want to see what he says about it surviving the year. GNU.
Beyond the reach of what we're able to afford in the current fiscal envelope. But that doesn't mean we can't start doing what we've already done in the Western Cape. It's focus on improving treatment of people at hospitals, public healthcare facilities, focus on improving the experience of people with the interface with the public healthcare system, employing more nurses and doctors, making sure we improve standards there. Those are the things that we can all agree in the medium-term development plan need to be done. And I don't think that anyone could disagree with that. So in a coalition where there are ideological differences, you focus on the things that you can get right. And let me be very clear. We're not here to implement the national democratic revolution.
But you're doing it.
That's the ANC's ideology.
And you're doing it for them.
It's not the ideology of the Government of National Unity.
Yeah, it is.
There are 9 other parties in that GNU.
No, there aren't.
And they all have their own views and opinions. And we're not there to implement the NDR. We're there to promote growth and jobs.
Nova Scotia
and
rocks.
That's our focus there. Amanda, the meeting is taking place later this evening. Obviously waiting finalization from the President's office. It's scheduled to take place then at least. Burial's question, sorry.
Will the GNU last?
Yeah, I think the GNU will last if there's a genuine commitment by the parties to be proper stewards and good coalition partners. So I said very clearly, we are committed to the GNU. We regard it as South Africa's most precious asset at the moment, given what we're seeing, the effect of it on economic growth and jobs already. And it's not something we've entered lightly, and it's certainly not something we'll exit lightly. But the moment we're unable to promote jobs and economic growth, and that we are treated as bystanders in a government which we bring a large share of the votes to, it will obviously have to reconsider. So I believe it can last. I believe it must last. I think the alternatives are too ghastly to contemplate. But it requires then a maturity. Sorry. It requires a level of maturity and partnership that to date has not been displayed. And I think if we're going to make this thing last in the interests of South Africa, which I think it behoves us to do, then I think we need to move into a new reset era where there is greater consensus on decision making. And it applies on everything. South Africa's international relations stance. This is not an ANC government anymore. There are other parties with different views and opinions. And we must have those discussions. How do we get the economy growing? Yes, you've got different views and opinions, but how do we focus on the levers of growth and job creation? And let's focus like a laser beam on those things. There are so many challenges facing our country after 20 years of absolute flat economic growth and our country heading in the wrong direction. There's lots to overcome. And we're not going to be able to do everything in the first 5 years. We must accept that. But surely we can focus on growth and jobs and start to turn the needle so that by the time 2029 rolls around, we'll have something concrete to show South Africans. An economy that's more inclusive and growing, more people in work.
Inclusive.
More children with greater opportunities
exclusive.
When they leave school. Better public service.
30%.
That processes and treats people like customers. Making sure that we've got access to cheap internet so that more entrepreneurs can start up.
Inexpensive internet.
Making sure our
not cheap.
basic education system is working.
It's not.
Making sure that there's justice for small
There
fisher
isn't.
folk in small towns around South
There
Africa.
isn't.
Making sure we build the rural economy. Making sure we're able to move people out of subsistence farming into family farming.
ANC wants to put 1 million people into
We can
subsistence
show
farming.
South Africans those things by 2029. I think we'd be able to look back with pride at this time and see these difficulties that we had.
Are
but
we
know
done,
in the
John?
end it was worth it. But that can only come if there's a reset in the
Oh, my
relations
goodness.
in the GNU and that we're treated as partners, not as bystanders. Thank you very much.
All right, hopefully that's it.
The budget. Well, if you include NHI and you abolish medical aids and have it transferred into a fund, there's no ways we'd be able to support a budget like that because it's not a real budget. The billions of rands that NHI is expected to cost will blow out the budget massively. So in the medium-term development plan, I think what the focus should be on is how we focus on fixing primary healthcare and public healthcare facilities. And we pour money and effort and resources into that. Once we've done that, we can come back and have a debate around medical aids and medical tax credits at a later stage. But my worry is that you're going to crash the entire system. And it will be a catastrophic economic blow for South Africa as well.
Gee, many crickets. Are we done now, finally?
Thank you very much, John. Colleagues, sorry?
Oh, my goodness. Are we going to take one more question? Sorry, Helen, we don't need another question. She got a favorite reporter?
Colleagues, thank you very much for
Okay.
being here. It is extremely clear that the Democratic Alliance wants to make South Africa work, and that
No,
we
it's
want
not.
to do it via this GNU, and that we will do a lot of things to protect this GNU. It is, however, high time now that the ANC does the same. I want to remind everybody that the Democratic Alliance's candidate selection process will open on the 1st of February, and we invite every person out there that thinks that he or she can make a contribution towards the Democratic Alliance as well as this country to please come and join us. John, thank you very much for holding out with your voice. That's clearly, John was yesterday already started to battle, and this morning I said, are you fine? He said, let's push through. So John, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the Gauteng virus. Dr. Ivan Meyer, thank you very much for you as well for being here and for steering us on the federal side, and Ellen, for
Thank
you
you,
as
Ellen.
well.
Very
We
good.
really appreciate it. Colleagues, this is the end of the press conference. There will be an opportunity for questions afterwards, which I and some of the other panel members will be able to assist you with. Thank you very much.
All right, that's going to do it for the DA. We're going to turn that off there, folks. All right, so let me just cover this now, okay? And run through my notes here about what the hell's going on, because it's, wow. All right, so we got 143 people currently here. Be sure to hit that like button, folks. I am up at all night. I stayed up all night for you all for this.
That was easy.
At least you do is give me a like. And thanks for the super chats that came in. I do appreciate it. I think is Erica. And then we had another one came a little bit later. And thank you for that. Okay, let me go ahead and can we get to 100 votes on that poll? Because we got 140 people currently here. And let me run through some of my notes. I won't close the poll yet. All right, so let's start off with John Steenhuisen. And he talked about the DA entered the GNU because the ANC lacked votes and the coalition was necessary to save South Africa. And he said they did it so that South Africa wouldn't survive a coalition with MK and EFF, all of which is true, that portion. And he said the two largest parties needed a consensus, and that's the DA and the ANC. But there isn't a consensus. We've already seen Bella passed and implemented, or in the process of being implemented. We've seen a 3% black tax being proposed and likely to be implemented. We've now seen expropriation without compensation, which is unconstitutional, a violation of the Declaration of Human Rights, of which South Africa is a signatory, and it's immoral. Not to mention a violation of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which means that South Africa has disqualified itself for duty-free access to the U.S. market. Just stupid own goal. So there isn't a consensus. The DA said they're committed to coalition surviving. We heard this over and over again. And the reason is because they believe the coalition is how growth and jobs will come to South Africa, except they're not coming to South Africa. He harped on about Clause 19 and the whole point about 60% of the seats in Parliament, which would be the DA and the ANC, 21 and 40 is 61. And those two needed to agree on all policy things. So he said Ramaphosa agreed to a meeting with him, and later in the question and answer session, Steenhuisen said that meeting will take place tonight. And once again, he said they committed to the government national union. They see it as a vehicle for growth. I don't. Then national health insurance, as presented, will not achieve universal health care. That's true. And he said, once again, we're squarely behind the GNU. Boy, they really beat that drum. But the problem with that, folks, is you can be squarely behind the squarely behind the GNU, because Ramaphosa has achieved all his policy goals except for NHI. That's the only thing left. And then John Steenhuisen clearly is taking cough medicine because he's delusional at this stage. Said investors coming back from Davos, investors are looking at South Africa. He's delusional. I'm pulling investments out of South Africa. There's no point in going into a country where you already have to provide your own security, your own electricity, your own infrastructure, roads, rails, highways, even your own planes if necessary. And then on top of it, you have rampant crime, outrageously high tuberculosis, HIV rates, which lowers your productivity. And then on top of that, they can expropriate your property, or you have to give them 25% of your equity. That's not of interest to me or any rational investors in South Africa. The only people are going to invest in your country, people who want your minerals, and you're not the place to go for minerals. So they're wrong. I don't know where John Steenhuisen gets the idea that investors are interested in South Africa. If they are, it's because they haven't done their due diligence. Anybody in their right mind would invest in South Africa except for the Chinese who get special privileges. He mentioned that 4 parties were ignored by the ANC. He harped on this story over and over again, as did Helen Zille, how they're offended, they were not consulted. And he said that a third time they're committed to the government of national unity. That began to be a bit of a broken record. His needle was stuck in the groove there. He said, if the DA is not included in policy going forward, it makes it difficult to continue. Well, duh. He said, we will not be taken for granted. We will not be reduced to spectator. Well, that's exactly what you are. You've been taken for granted, and you were reduced to a spectator by the ANC over all these policy positions that have been cropping up since September. Yvonne Meyer got up and spoke, and he said there's a federal council meeting they just had in Joburg. That's why they're meeting, and it was about the upcoming municipal elections. And this is where the DA completely lost it and went tone deaf. They went completely tone deaf. They are completely reading the room wrong. They think that South Africans care about the municipal elections in 2026, 2027. They do, but they don't. What they care about is expropriation without compensation, 3% black tax to destroy businesses, and Bella. That's what they care about right now. And these things were barely discussed. So they had 4 objectives, and this is all about the municipal elections. Now, the thing for the ANC, for the DA is that the DA lost considerably in the last elections. In fact, let me find that very quickly here. I put these statistics together earlier. I was making a slide because I was going to make another video, but I didn't finish it. Sometimes I do that. I start working on something, I'm not able to finish it. I can find my old thumbnails here, so I got 100+ files in here, or slides. Where's it at? There it is. So the Democratic Alliance municipal elections in 2016, they won 1,782 seats. In 2021, that number was reduced to 1,396. So they lost almost 400 seats. They were the largest party in 24 municipalities in 2016 and 2021, the largest party in 23. But by being the largest party in 2016, they outright control, they didn't need any coalition partner, 19 municipalities. That was reduced to just 11. They lost their outright majorities in Beaufort West, Oudtshoorn, Cape Agulhas, Saldanha Bay, Breed Valley, and Langebeg. That's an atrocious performance. So that was their performance in 2021, vice 2016, which was their peak. And now they're talking about doing better the next time around. And they say they're going to retain the current municipalities, which is a small number. They want to grow their footprint. They want to govern more towns, and they want to rescue more towns. They talked a lot about how they're going to rescue towns. And then this became very disturbing. Ivan Meyer started this nonsense, which is what the DA did in the last municipal elections. They told people, don't vote for smaller parties. Don't vote for smaller parties. Well, that's a betrayal of democracy. People should vote for whoever they think the right party is. Why would you listen to a party that tells you not to vote for other parties? I mean, you can make your own decisions. And they said all municipalities in the Free State Northwest have already been collapsed, is what Yvonne Meyer said. And he's correct. But what's your point? And he talked about service delivery being the problem. But the reality is this, is those who can afford it don't rely on the government for service delivery any longer because it's unreliable all over the country. If they can escape government-provided services, they go elsewhere to the private sector for fire, for police, security, rubbish removal, whatever it takes. They said they're beginning their campaign for 2026 municipal elections now. And he called it, and then Helen Zille reiterated this point, the blue machine. I think it's the blue bubblegum machine because there's not much there except blown bubble. They said they have a rescue mission for your town. And again, he said, don't vote for smaller parties. The DA is preparing a rescue plan for your town. Really? Then Helen Zille got up and she went right away back to the blue machine. What the hell is this blue machine? That's their election earring. Well, it sucked in 2021, so you better get it right this time. Now, instead of telling us what the hell is going on, we started getting a lecture about how they're recruiting candidates for 2026. I don't really care about that. I'm not a South African, I realize that, but I don't think most of you care about it either. And so what came across was this: complete amateurs, rubes, completely missing the room, not reading the room, completely unaware of what's going on around them, ignoring the elephant in the room, the National Democratic Revolution, which is in full force. The ANC is executing its National Democratic Revolution. They completely ignore that. It's insanity of the highest order. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Wow. Wow. Steenhuisen looked like he was being held hostage when Helen Zille was talking. I don't know if you saw that, but he looked like he was being held hostage. Seriously. So they're all worried about how do they find the best people up for the challenge. Well, I don't think they care about the best people up for the challenge. I think the DA cares about the people who are bland and will do what they're told to do. So they talked about a catalyst program. What is this? Something you pour into your engine for better performance? they've got 77 candidates in it, but they're not guaranteed a position on the party list. And that, again, comes back to the problem with South Africa's so-called democracy. You don't vote for the candidate, you vote for the party. Well, why should I have to please the party? I should have to please the voters, but that's not how it works. Not how it works in South Africa. So on 1 February, you can submit your curriculum vitae if you want to be one of these Catalyst program people and one of the candidate for them. So I'll submit my CV. And then on 1 March, if you want to be a mayoral candidate, you can submit your name for that. But it seemed like the focus for this entire effort to grow the party was focused on Gauteng. At least that's how it came across. And I had to ask myself repeatedly, are these people jellyfish? They seem pretty spineless. And there's a whole host of other things that the DA has been largely silent on. South Africa's refinery closures. They've been quiet on that since they came in government. We still don't have the refineries back. Only the one in Cape Town is operating to the best of my knowledge. So what about the rest of the refineries? South Africa needs this refining capacity. It's outrageous how much people have to pay for petrol because it has to be refined abroad and then shipped in. And what about the ArcelorMittal closure of the steel plant? I haven't heard anything from the DA on that other than just a brief, oh, we're upset about it. There's no focus on that, no industrial policy. And then finally, the South African National Defense Force, he acknowledged the loss of soldiers who died. But the real issue here is not that. The real issue is how do you let the Defense Force have only 0.74% of the GDP? And there's no argument about increasing it because this is a leftist political party that doesn't care about national defense. They claim they do, but they don't. So then Billy Okamp got up and there were some questions. He was the one that pulled the questions. So how will we know if it's time to depart the GNU? Well, that question was not really answered to my satisfaction. And we heard Helen Zille do this. We heard John Steenhuisen. They are just lockstep in this. We brought 3.5 million votes. They're ignoring the 500,000 voters they lost between 2016 and 2021. How do you lose that large percentage of your vote? Now, all of them were offended that they were ignored by the ANC. All the while, they're ignoring South Africans with this joke press conference. That's what it was, a joke of a press conference. You know, John Steenhuisen mentioned something about having a tin ear towards the DA's views, opinions. That's the ANC has a tin ear to the views, opinions of the DA. Well, that's kind of how the DA is treating voters in South Africa. They have a tin ear. And there's a question about, you know, the DA's been in charge of Tshwane, and then Helen Zille gave a detailed, extensively long answer about, you know, how, you know, you can't overcome the cater deployment. So she blamed graft and corruption for the messed up service delivery. Even though the DA's been in charge of Tshwane for almost the entire past decade, they haven't overcome this problem. So there's clearly something more than just a cater issue going on. And Helen claimed that the DA is the only party with the skills, the capacity, the history to fix the metros. Well, I don't think anybody has that stuff at this point. She went on to talk about, because she was asked a question about the legal process against J.P. Smith in the Cape Town mayoral committee. And so she said, Mayor Jordan Hill Lewis looks at all the cases and he talks to the police if they can give him information to determine whether he needs to suspend somebody before the case is resolved. Well, that's all fine and dandy. She kept talking about prima facie evidence. Well, where's the prima facie evidence in the Ronaldo Gous case? You've convicted him of a crime he never committed, and you've booted him out of a party for actions that occurred 14 years ago, years before he even joined your party. And you're telling us that a guy accused of rape, the case was dismissed. And then, anyway, it's just, look, it's just, there's something not right here. So the question was asked about the state of the relationship with the Freedom Front Plus. I think we missed part of that because I tuned it out for a moment, but didn't really hear that in suspending foreign aid. Steenhuisen did address the concerns about the U.S. suspending foreign aid, particularly PEPFAR. And then Helen said, we're here by the grace and favor of the voters. Really? Really? I guess so. And don't get upset with us when we compromise. Well, all the DA does is compromise. Show me one thing they've won on. Yes, Farrell Haffiji from the Daily Maverick asked the question, will the GNU survive the year? Steenhuisen said, yes, it will. Yep, their road to local government. Well, this is not the road to local government. This is the road to irrelevance. That's what's going on with the DA, the road to irrelevance. All right, let me close the poll. I think we got over 100 votes on that now. And let's see what you guys came up with. End the poll. So only 14% think that they'll become the biggest party. That, look, I mean, I realize that I have a skewed set of viewers who, by and large, probably aren't fans of the DA. I used to have a lot of DA viewers, but a lot of them have soured on the DA. But still, that's a pretty depressing number for the DA. They're not reading the room. 14%. 14%. Yeah, they're so smart, they're stupid. That's what the DA is. Yep. All right, let me get back to the chat. chat back here. The poor will suffer the most. That's correct. Everyone loses. Of course it will last. You're refusing to leave no matter what. Exactly, Indy. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy right there. Not going to happen, John. The ANC doesn't care about everyone. Yep, they only care about caters. The alternative is happening regardless. Yep. This guy's delusional. Yep. All those people who have HIV no longer have funded health care. Delusional alliance is full of sheeple, says Dylan. Charles says, cowards. They just won't make a positive decision. ANC are doing their thing regardless of the DA. Just stupid, delusional buttholes. John needs to grow a pair, says DK. ANC has so far stepped all over your red lines, and yet you're still there, says Andre. Bending over and taking it in the bum. Yep. What about the Zana report? What jobs? Yeah, exactly. There are no jobs. Zilla needs to give John his balls back, says Charles. You'll have hyperinflation and firm letters written to show. Yeah. Pathetic, says Michael. That's what the DA are. Yep. This is medication speaking. The DA do not care for the minorities anymore. They think blacks will vote for them. What about the 3% ANC grift? Well, yeah, they've not addressed that. Yeah, they haven't addressed that at all. I've addressed this frequently. They haven't done it. All right. So I'm going to do a video that wraps all this up with my comments, but I think I need to take a nap before I do that because I'm wiped out. Although I wish I could get it up now. It's a good time to get it up. But anyway, funny how DA was fighting BBE and now it's not even discussed because there's a new fight. 2 steps forward, 1 back. Yep. They haven't learned that you must never trust a commie. Okay, the DA is delusional. They'll wake up after this country is completely unlivable. Well, it's already that way for a lot of people. If Ronaldo starts his own party, he could coalesce with other parties. I don't think Ronaldo's going to start his own party. He doesn't have the money behind it for that. The 3% black tax. The Parks Tao recently proposed and announced to the world that the ANC is going to move forward with a tax on corporate profits. After you paid your taxes, then you have to take 3% of your corporate profits and put it into a slush fund, which will be administered to black-owned businesses only to improve transformation of the economy. So corporations must take their profits to fund their competition to drive them out of business. It's unconstitutional, it's racist, and it's bullshit. Yep. And the ANC is just going to take the money out of the fund. That's what it's all about. 3% grift with ANC squeeze companies. Yeah, that's exactly, Charles. Please hit the thumbs up button. Yeah, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, folks. Carol B says, John will not rock the boat. He said he's not running. DA disgusts me as they have never stood up or held ground on anything. Yep, well, I hear you. Lana says, Chinese will not invest. They only bring their goods to sell. No, the Chinese have built some things in South Africa because they have exclusive industrial parks. Yep. This jelly spine fool doesn't work for our people. EWC is not only property. Yeah, no, Robert, you're not telling me anything new. I'm the first person to point that out years ago. I've been telling people that. You know, the AfriForum of Solidarity kept talking about, land confiscation. I'm like, that's not it, guys. It's property. Then they started saying it. Government's provided services are good in Cape Town, city, and province. Good. Yeah, Michael, I will disagree with that. I've been to Monenberg, and there was rubbish all over the road. I've been to Khayelitsha. There's rubbish all over the road. So it's episodic. It's where they decide to provide the services. It would be great if you could consult and offer the guidance. DK, I offered a few years ago that I could offer them political advice and analysis, but they weren't interested. And I don't know if I'm interested in helping the DA now. They clearly don't have the interests of South Africans in their heart. They claim they do. If they do, then they're just not very bright. They're not getting it at all. Oh, don't regard yourself as a throwaway, yeah. So what else? Francois. Lana, how's it going? IR and FMF are giving them advice. Nobody listens. Yeah, exactly, Lana. The DA doesn't listen. By the way, I will have an article appearing in the Daily Friend tomorrow about Donald Trump's executive orders. So that article will be up. They had one today, which will have his very different. That was a left to center political view. Mine will be center right, but mine will be up tomorrow on the Daily Friend. So check it out, folks. I'll get the link once it goes up. Okay. Dear Socialist Adjacent. Yes, they are, Stephen. Thank you for the super chat earlier. Property bill is pacing the way for something bigger. What would that be? Yeah, I do need to sleep. That's why I'm not going to make the video now because I'll probably make some mistakes. But I've made my notes. I got my notes here, and I did them as I went along. Yep, so I got them all saved. So make sure I save it again in case the computer crashes or the power goes out. John keeps saying they won't do it in 5 years. Why not get some advice from Trump and do it in 5 days? Exactly. That's a good line, Russell Copeland. Why not do it in 5 days? Screw 5 years. Yep. Neville says, if the residents throw rubbish around, it will be all over the road. Yep. Anyway, folks, hey, Chris Ehlers, how's it going? Be sure to hit the like button. I do appreciate that. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for being here. I have been up since Sunday at 6 a.m. here now. The sun should be coming out any moment, or starting to come out. I'm going to go take a nap, and then I'll get up. Hopefully, I'll do the news on time. It depends on when I get up. So anyway, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Be sure to leave a comment behind if you like. And we'll catch you later, guys. Thanks for being here. Check out my other videos. I did 2 more videos overnight while I was up. I made a video about the U.S. suspending foreign direct assistance and how South African leftists are losing their minds. I think there's some good clips in there. I hope you like it. You know, it's like you might, stupid people should wear signs. That way you wouldn't ask them questions. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't see. Here's your sign. Yeah, stupid people should wear signs. And you can't fix stupid. That's what Ron White says. Anyway, go check that out. And then I did another one about Carl Niehaus. Calling for the resignation of Angie Motshekam. And I call for the resignation of both of them. Cheers, everybody. God bless.